In panel A, we've now drawn a function that tells us for any lambda that you choose what my best row response is. In other words, we've drawn a best response function for any lambda that you might choose. We can now do the same for you, draw a best response function for any row that I might choose in panel B. Let's begin by assuming that I set row to something less than 0.5. Since row is the probability that I'll say heads, this means I'll say tails more often than heads. Since you're trying to say the opposite of what I'm saying, it means that you should be saying heads for sure, since I'm more likely to say tails than to say heads. In other words, you should set lambda equal to 1. If I set row equal to 0.5, it means I flip a coin and decide whether to say heads or tails, depending on whether the coin comes up heads or tails. In other words, I say heads half the time and tails half the time. It then doesn't really matter what you do. You can set your lambda to anything between 0 and 1, say heads all the time or tails all the time, or do something in between. All of that would be a best response. But if I set row above 0.5, it means I'm more likely to say heads than tails. And since you're trying to do the opposite of what I do, that means you should say tails for sure. In other words, you should set lambda equal to 0 in response to me setting row above 0.5.